TANF bill, which is a leadership bill, and that was sent to me. So I'll be working on that on the Senate side. But other than that, things are moving quite along, and the pace is picking up, and I think we're looking at session moving very quickly. I think we've got 5 weeks left, 6 weeks left, something like that. But thank you very much for having me, and look forward to the good questions.
Thank you very much, as always, Senator Ford. Let's move on now to Representative Bruce Borders.
Hey, well, John, I'm going to kind of do the other bookend. I'll kind of share the House bills and where we're at on that. Out of the bills that were introduced in the House, 149 of them ended up passing. There are 119 that are have either been heard in a Senate committee or are being heard in a Senate committee. Out of the 149, 30 of them have already made it out of a Senate committee. So far, none of the bills that have been introduced have been defeated on the Senate side. 17 of the bills have passed second reading over on the Senate side. 6 of them have actually completely passed the Senate, and which means they're eligible to go to the governor for signature and to become law. And 6 of them were returned without any amendments added on, and 6 have been sent to the governor. So out of those that passed out of the House 149, 6 of them are now either on the governor's desk or have been signed into law already. So that, and I always say that the more laws that die on the vine, typically the better off the people that we serve are better off. Not that everything, you don't want everything to die, but it's just as well that a lot of stuff doesn't make it down the pipe. Something else that I might mention, I had mentioned to a number of business owners that, or had in conversations with them, I guess, the COVID problems that they were having, a big problem they had, they were worried about the liability of it, of just, are we going to be sued for allowing people in our business and so forth. And so we had House Bill 1002, which basically, in fact, I'll just read a quick overview from our Republican staff. It says, provides retroactive temporary immunity from March 1st, 2020 to April 1st, 2022 for all individuals and legal entities from COVID-19 related lawsuits for conduct that does not rise to the level of gross negligence, willful or wanton misconduct, or intentional misrepresentation. Recognizing the pandemic strain on the healthcare industry, House Bill 1002 also provides specific immunity from professional discipline to healthcare providers and expands their existing immunity tied to emergency declarations. And we needed to have that to happen. As an owner of several small businesses myself, and then all of us see whether we go to the grocery store, whether we go to a restaurant, no matter what it is, all of us are in some type of business, education, manufacturing, insurance, you name it. Again, the food industry, businesses and healthcare providers needed some immunity, and in essence, that's what House Bill 1002 is providing.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders. Let's move along now to Representative Tanya Pack.
Good morning. Thanks for having us, Vigo County Public Library, and all you guys do. It is, what do we call it, halftime. So I like this part because, all the bills that started in the House, there's a weeding out process, and I like to think the best of the best continue and move to the Senate and vice versa. So my couple things I've been working on, my students with disabilities passed the House. So again, we're trying to find kids that with an IEP that didn't graduate from high school, and then the state will find them and help retrain and offer some additional opportunities for people to either get their high school diploma or get to work if they choose to. So I'm very excited about that one. And I'm also on elections. So we pass things in the House and then send them over to the Senate, where Senator Ford is on elections there, and he reviews them. And it's a good system. And then the other committee I'm on is Ways and Means, which crafts the budget. So being the first time on that committee, it's been fascinating to watch how the budget is crafted. And I mean, there's a lot of working pieces in the state of Indiana. a lot of things moving. So all these programs, departments, everybody needs money, right? And so the Ways and Means Committee kind of sifts through all that and keeps a pretty good fiscal handle on the state of Indiana. So excited to be here, and thank you as always.
Thank you very much, Representative Paff. And finally, we are going to hear from Representative Bob Heaton.
Well, thank you, Ron Terrell, and to the sponsors out there. So, well, as Representative Paff mentioned, that you do learn a lot on Ways and Means, and there's a lot going in there right now, being a long session of budget year. And one thing that we just looked at on a couple days ago was Senate Bill 336, and this was a bill that was the author is Senator, I believe, Senator Aaron Freeman, and this deals with business personal property tax. And I know a lot of mayors out there and city officials are looking at that bill, but we looked at this a few years ago, and nothing didn't go anywhere, but they brought it back and it passed out of the Senate, and now we're dealing with it. And so we'll see what happens next week. I'm probably going to have an amendment to that bill, but it basically it deals with just that. Small business owners paying a tax for many years. People around us in other states, they don't have this tax, and so. But if it is eliminated, it will cost. I think Vigo County $400,000. And I know there's some concern by Mayor Bennett and others about that, but some of my other counties, it doesn't affect them that much at all. But so that's going to be addressed here very shortly. I still get calls and people want to talk about the Wetlands bill, Senate Bill 389, and I don't know if that's that hadn't been heard in a committee yet, and I think that's going to go to Representative Doug Goodwine's committee. But but it's and just like Senator Ford said last month, it deals with isolated wetlands, and that's people think it's going to eliminate the Goose Pond. It's going to eliminate 𝘭𝘵𝘰𝘭𝘰𝘨. It's not going to mess with that at all. But but we're dealing with that. Farm Bureau supports that, and we'll see where that lands in the next couple of weeks. So, but we're beyond the halfway point. It seems like things are still running slowly, I guess, but we'll see how it goes the next 5.5, 6 weeks.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Heaton. And I was told in the news world every now and then we have to do a take two. So we're just going to do a quick take two on the welcome. And we would just like to welcome everybody to the third legislative Cracker Barrel session. We are being brought to you virtually by the Vigo County Public Library. I'm Rondrell Moore, and I'm so excited to be your moderator today. And this is a time for you to ask all of your questions that you would like to ask to our legislators. And we are joined today by 4 legislators from around the Wabash Valley, and we're so excited that they can be here today. We've just heard from Senator John Ford, Representative Tanya Paff, Representative Bruce Borders, and Representative Bob Heaton. As always, we've reached out to Representative Alan Morrison to attend today's event. He has not responded, and so we are glad to have the legislators that we have here today to answer your questions. So, okay, gotten that business out of the way, let's get on to the question portion. And we're going to hear first and foremost from our sponsors. And as I'm reading the questions from our sponsors, we encourage members of the public to go ahead and start submitting their questions via the Q&A portion right at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just start sending in your questions there. They'll be moderated, given to me, and then I will ask those. But we're going to start with our sponsors. Let's actually list our sponsors very quickly. They are, of course, the Vigo County Public Library, the League of Women Voters of Vigo County, the Will Center, Vigo County Teachers Association, Vigo County Taxpayers Association, Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP, and Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. And so we are certainly grateful for every single one of our sponsors. All righty, if everybody's ready, let's jump right into those questions that are coming from our sponsors first, and then we'll jump open to the public. The first question, it's actually a pretty, it's a complex question, and 2 of our sponsors asked essentially the same thing. So with permission, I'm going to kind of combine them, and it's pretty lengthy because there's some background, but as I read it, you'll kind of understand why I'm combining these two questions. And they come from the League of Women Voters of Vigo County, as well as the Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP. And it says, reportedly, during the debate on House Bill 1387, Representative Greg Porter and Representative Vernon Smith were booed, heckled, and shouted down by fellow colleagues in the House of Representatives. In separate incidents, Representatives Vernon Smith and Representative Vanessa Summers were harassed, bullied, and intimidated by representatives who have been identified. These racially charged incidents occurred on February 18th, 2021. First, what was your reaction to these occurrences? Second, what efforts should leaders in the state legislature undertake to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion among members of the legislature? And that portion comes from the League of Women Voters of Vigo County. The second kind of follow-up portion to that comes from the greater branch of the NAACP. And it asks, do you agree, in light of what we've mentioned recently, do you agree that civility must be restored to the House chamber? Do you agree that the House Speaker and Sergeant at Arms must be more effective in controlling their members? Do you agree rude, disruptive members must not be allowed to rule the House chamber? Do you agree that a public apology should be given to the Representatives Porter, Smith, and Summers? And do you agree there is a need for implicit bias training for all members of the House? And again, that is a very complex question, but it involves the same incident, and it's just basically the reaction to those. So I'm going to open this up to the panel, and whoever would like to take on this question, go ahead.
Well, I was there, so
Go ahead.
First of all, you know, the description of the events is definitely misleading. What it was a bill that allowed people to. There was a school. It was a school district where they were wanting to allow students to go to an area that was closer to their home, and and this bill had been introduced several times in the past. I think once or twice. And Bob, you may know more on that. I can't remember, but it was once or twice before. And the bill kept being called a racist bill, which it wasn't a racist bill at all. I mean, just because somebody calls something, calls skimmed milk whole milk doesn't make it whole milk. And so anyhow, we had 3 speakers in a row who got up, and in fact, Vanessa Summers said, some of you may not consider yourselves racist, but she said something to the extent of racism is built into your system or whatever. And, just because somebody calls me a racist doesn't mean that I am one, and I'm not one. And it's like and Vern Smith is a very good friend of mine. In fact, Vern and I have gone out eating together many times. His office is right next door to mine. In fact, we share a wall with one another. I've bought ties off of him. He runs a clothing store up in Lake County, and we're very, very good friends. And then for him to basically refer to us as racist because we support an education bill that he doesn't agree with, or that Vanessa doesn't agree with, that's just a bunch of poppycock. And so, quite frankly, after you have one speaker after another, 3 in a row calling you a racist because you support a bill that has nothing to do with racism at all, that's just nonsense. And so, of course, it's one of those things that, everybody likes to pretend as if the world were coming to an end as a result of it. Well, it's not. In fact, that very day, I spoke to Greg Porter. Greg and I see each other all the time. I spoke to Vern, and I've invited Vern actually down to my house many times. I say, hey, Vern, if you ever get tired of sticking around the State House, I drive home every evening. We've always got an extra bed for you. Come on down and we'll go for a hike at Shakamak and so forth. So, here's the deal. All right. We all need to put on our big boy pants and get past it. And again, just because somebody points their finger at you and calls you racist, that doesn't mean it's true. That's just simply a lie. And people, after hearing it from 3 speakers in a row, said, this is nonsense. I'm getting tired of being called a racist when I'm not, and all I'm doing is voting for an education bill that I happen to agree with. So, as far as them wanting us to go to sensitivity training or whatever, that's a bunch of nonsense too. I mean, again, is Vern still my friend? You bet he is. Is Greg still my friend? You bet he is. And so is Vanessa. And Vanessa, even herself, she said that she tends to get a little carried away with her mouth sometimes, and she was out there yelling, and her and Sean Eberhardt got into it. And again, they're all my friends, but it was a dust up. We'll all get along just fine and life will go on, but we don't need a sensitivity class to straighten it out. It basically just needs to be friends going, that was an unfortunate incident, but life's going to move on.
Thank you very much, Representative Borders. And I see Representative Heaton has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this was Bill 1367. Jake Teska from St. Joe County is the author of the bill, and it did pass. I think it was like 53 to 42. But this dealt with Green Township in St. Joe County. And there was students that were going from there to Walkerton, Indiana for school, and they dealt with transportation costs. And this bill here was presented 2 years ago by Representative Wesco, and it was voted on, it was defeated, but there was nothing whatsoever talked about racism or discrimination or anything. And so I was kind of taken aback by it, why all of a sudden we voted on again two years later, and then we're called racist. So I'm kind of like Representative Borders. I take offense to that, but I tell you, I went back. I'm in the back row of the chambers there in the government center, and when I went back there, I saw Representative Greg Porter, and African-American Democrat from Marion County, along with J.D. Prescott and Shane Lindauer. Shane's from Jasper, J.D.'s he's north of Richmond, Indiana. And they were praying back there, and which I just thought that was great. And I went up to Greg afterwards, told him I loved him and he loved me. But anyway, of course, that's not presented, on the Associated Press or on Wish TV, but anyway, so I think it was kind of blown out of proportion, really, quite a bit. But I don't know where it's going to go in the Senate, and we'll see what happens there. But it's been an issue that has been out there for many years, and so it's brought to light the other day. But we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Heaton. And Representative Papp, you have your hand up.
So I have a little different take on it all. I was, of course, there as well. I heard this bill 2 years ago, and in committee, it was brought up that it was indeed, it has to do with South Bend and their desegregation order. So there was a lot of talk in committee about, does this bill have racist implications? And we're trying to move they're trying to move 300 white kids out of the South Bend district to a different district. And so, yes, this has come up before. When I heard, and then again, I heard it again in committee this year in elections, and again, the racism component came up again. So when it came up on the floor and I was listening to the arguments, I did not react the same way Bruce and Bob. I never heard them call anyone racist. So perhaps.
Whoa.
Well, I would tell you, I heard Vernon talking about his personal experiences, and I heard Greg say, if you don't think that this bill has problems, then meet me in the hall. So yes, it was very contentious. All that aside, I was very embarrassed to hear members of the General Assembly boo the speakers. So whatever the situation is, that I was so embarrassed to be a member of the General Assembly that day, to hear members of the people I work and sit next to boo the speakers. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. To me, that was unacceptable. We do ethics training, we do harassment training. I see no problem in the legislative body having to do implicit and explicit bias training. This is not a one-time incident. If we go back to the summer and the Black Lives Matter movement, there is obviously a problem in our great country that we need to deal with it. And I take my role very seriously as a leader. there's 100 of us, there's 50 senators. We are supposed to be what people are looking up to. So to sit on the floor and hear people being booed, that was very disconcerting for me. So I think it's like any incidents, you hear sort of, everyone has a different take on what happened. I absolutely agree with Representative Borders and Heaton. There's a lot of, the media tends to pick and choose what they want to cover. So there are other things happening there. But yes, I believe that we need some training as a body.
Okay. Thank you very much, Representative Paff. I am going to, and this is a little different than what we normally do, but I've specifically been given directions to go back and emphasize parts of the question that I asked and make sure that they are actually answered. And that is from the Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP, specifically, and this is a question for those who answered the last question. Do you agree that civility must be restored at the House chamber? Do you agree that rude, disruptive members must not be allowed to rule the House chamber? Do you agree that a public apology should be given to Representatives Porter, Smith, and Summers? And I will ask that of each person who responded to the last question. So Representative Borders, we'll start with you.
Sure. If Representative Smith and Representative Porter and Representative Summers, if they want to apologize for referring to us as racist, I will accept that apology.
That was not the question. The
No, but that is my answer.
Okay. All right. And do you agree that rude, disruptive members must not be allowed to rule the House chamber?
Rude, disruptive members did not rule the House chamber. And, here's the thing, Rondrell, okay, we're human beings, all right? And so I know everybody, says, oh, when you get in there, this place has all this dignity and all that. But the fact of it is people have emotions. And whenever they are accused of something that's not true, people are going to react to it. And, as a mayor, when I was my first term as mayor of Jasonville, I was the first Republican in like 48 years. I had 5 Democrats that were on the city council. You talk about a tough job. The General Assembly is a piece of cake compared to that. Quite frankly, I actually got angry enough at the city council one time. I grabbed the table and I flipped the table over. And I did, because they just fought me on everything we were trying to do. And of course, there was a big article in the paper, Representative Borders, needs to behave himself and all that stuff. Well, then 4 years later, people brought me back in with 70% of the vote. All right, we're real people. We have real emotions. And I think the idea that, somehow because we go into the State House, we've got to be these really dignified people. And I don't care. I know some people are going to go, oh my gosh, it's him again. It's the Elvis guy saying this crazy stuff. But we have emotions, and that's okay. All right. And again, do Vern and I get along fine today? Yes. Do Greg and I get along fine?
I'm getting the stop sign. I'm so sorry. I'm getting the stop sign being held
but
up.
Don't worry. But wait, there's more.
Well,
but we'll be just fine. We don't need some type of sensitivity training. We're getting along fine.
And I believe we can mute if we need to. Yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we got to move on with that. So the consensus is that you disagree with those tenets for those questions, if I'm getting that correct.
Without a doubt.
Okay. Thank you very much, Representative Paff. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Representative Heaton, I believe, was next in the list. I'm sorry, Representative Heaton.
Yeah. Well, again, I never booed. I didn't hiss. I didn't do any of that. I was just, again, I was taken aback by it. But I've got friends that are black and brown, and I was on a group email yesterday with Leroy Staley and Carl Nix about a issue, a good friend of ours who's struggling right now health-wise. But so I'm just again, I was called, me and my colleagues were called racist, and I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And I think people should apologize to me because I'm not a racist. And so anyway, and I explained that to the people about 2 days later down in Owen County when we had our town hall the other day, last month down there. But so we'll see where it goes from here. But I took a different viewpoint than what some people did there at the State House.
So in summarizing, you're kind of in the same boat with Representative Borders in that you disagree with these tenets from the question from the NAACP, correct?
Yes, again, I don't think I at the grocery store the other day and I saw a good friend of mine, Dexter Schaus, and we talked and so forth. But it's just, again, I think it was blown out of proportion, really. I really do. And I'll talk to anybody about that.
All right, thank you very much. And finally, Representative Pat.
Yes, yes, and yes. And, perhaps it's because I'm an educator. What could this training possibly hurt? I mean, I am all about learning, and that's how we mend. That's how we get through things. Is opening our minds to perhaps different people's opinions about things. So I am all about implicit bias training. Again, this is not a singular incident. I don't think this is going to go away. There are things that we need to work for. If you look at the members of our General Assembly, we are not representing as far as race and gender. It's not equal in the state of Indiana anyway. So for me, of course, let's have training. Why not? To me, it can't help. It can't hurt.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, that was a very contentious question, the first of which we've had on this virtual session where we've had a back and forth. The disadvantage of this format is that we can't really have the same back and forth with members of the public. I want to remind you, I'm the mouthpiece of the public in this case. I am not giving my opinion. I will not engage in a back and forth with any of the representatives here because this is your platform. I would encourage you, if you have follow-up questions with each representative, to look into the chat and to look at their emails and to look at their phone numbers. If I were having this conversation, it would be very different as a reporter. So I want to make that clear. I will not be engaging in back and forths, no matter what my opinion is. My opinion doesn't matter. So let's move on to the next question. That is coming from our sponsors, and that is the Vigo County Teachers Association. And it asks, the current budget, House Bill 1001, while providing some increases to public school funding, will still divert $66 million from public schools to further expand private school vouchers. The budget also cuts funding to around 24 CTE, that's career and technical education classes, offered to our public school students, classes which allow students to transition into the workforce or post-secondary education with certifications and or college credits. With 90% of Indiana students attending traditional public schools, do you feel expanding vouchers and or cutting CTE funding is a reasonable choice? And if so, why? So who would like to take on that question? All right, Representative Pat.
So I was against both of these. So the $66 million expanding in vouchers, I have a problem with, because when an establishment gets a voucher, they have different rules than public schools have to play by. And I believe that everybody should have to play by the same rules. So to constantly divert money to different kinds of schools that don't have the same requirements as public schools, I have a big problem with that. The CTE funding, the cut, again, I believe it affects Vigo County. I'm trying to remember the number. It's a pretty big hit. So to me, the General Assembly should not be picking and choosing what careers kids should go into. So to cut funding from cooking and radio and television and film, and well, it was mentioned 24, to me, we don't pick and choose. We give people opportunities to take these classes, take a class and figure out, hey, is this what I want to do or not? That's the beauty of education, is to try things out. So I did do an amendment on the floor about the CTE funding, and I was told that they're going to hopefully try to restore it, but we'll see what the Senate does with that. But I am strongly in favor of getting that CTE funding back in.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Path. Anyone else? Okay, I saw Senator Ford's hand first, like just
saw
barely,
that hand.
just barely, and then we'll get to you, Representative Ford. So let's start with Senator Ford.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's on the Senate side, in terms of the CTE, we've started to do some research into it. I'd had Vigo County's numbers run off the House budget. And to me, it appears that Vigo County actually is going to get more money for the CTE program from what came out of the House. What as a state we have done is looked at what are jobs out there that are in high demand, high wage. And have had a state group looking at that for years. So I think, everyone has known this is coming. And I do have some concerns that a group at the state level would look at this and make the decision statewide. I think that's kind of be more of a regional decision. Because what is, a high wage, high demand job in Terre Haute may be different than Fort Wayne. So I think there's got to be some flexibility to it. But I support CTE programming. I think it's, I think it really can help our community grow. And if we're going to attract businesses, we need quality workers in all types of industries. In terms of the vouchers, I guess the first part of that question, I have not been a huge supporter of vouchers. We'll see what happens with that bill when it is heard and comes through. I think it was heard last week in House Education, and then they'll vote on it this week. But I do have some concerns on that voucher language.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Ford and Representative Waters.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking right here at our budget off to my left here, and we put in $438 million new dollars for kindergarten through the 12th grade. And you look at what we went through, and then we also shored up. A lot of schools obviously have not been meeting at least every day during the classroom, but we also, we made sure that they were 100% funded. And so, number one, I think that it's a good, solid budget. I think we, again, the vast majority of the new money that we did bring in went to education. And again, specifically, there was $438 million in new education funding. As far as the vouchers, again, parents are going to have the best interest of their child in mind, whether that be at a traditional public school or whether that be at a charter school, which is also a public school, or whether that be at a parochial school, whatever. And the fact of it is that money is not the state's money. That money comes from the pocket of Hoosier taxpayers, mothers and fathers and grandmas and grandpas and so forth. And they're going to choose whatever education they want for their child who they love. And so I do feel that I did support the voucher money and would always continue to support it. But that doesn't mean that I don't support traditional public schools, because in most cases, that's what parents do choose. And that's what my wife and I chose, quite frankly, for most of the years of our children's education. Now, there was a period of time where our daughter she went through some terrible times in a public school setting, and we put her in a private school. Now, back then, and we didn't make much money at all, and we were having to pay out of pocket. And so it was a struggle for us to afford that. But yet we were still, because we loved our daughter, we put her in a situation where she could academically grow, and she did very well, ended up becoming a nurse. In fact, she was the #1 RN student at Ivy Tech there in Terre Haute. And so again, out of love for their children, parents are going to choose what is best for their child, and they have a right to dictate that money should go to where they choose for their child.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Waters. And Representative Heaton, I think I saw your hand up at one point.
Yes, thank you. Well, as I voted on many years ago, as well as today, the money follows the child. And so, wherever that may be, no matter what zip code you are, which side of the tracks you are, that money's going to go with the child. I've got some numbers here that deals with the Vigo County School Corporation. And as I've talked to Dr. Hayworth maybe a year and a half ago about this, and it's a problem that we have not only here but throughout the state. But the enrollment in 2012, it was 15,592. Last year it was 14,074. And these numbers come from the Legislative Service Agency, nonpartisan in Indiana at the State House. But anyway, and because of that, the funding has come down as far as per on a gross level, but the money that's been contributed overall has went from $8,027 8.5 years ago to $9,418, and that's state and local money. So anyway, it is a concern, but I know that some people, the issue is you're seeing kids going from a traditional public school to another traditional public school, another county over, and you know, how does the locals stop that? I don't know, but you're seeing a lot of that.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next question. Just a quick reminder, and I actually don't even think I said this at the beginning, so this is my fault. 1.5 minutes for your responses, if you could. And not everybody has to respond to every question, you know, so just for the purposes of moving things along as best we can. But some good questions today, some really interesting questions. And we're still on sponsored questions from the Vigo County Taxpayers Association. They're just curious about your thoughts on how the almost $3 billion from the recent relief bill should be spent, disregarding for the moment that there will certainly be spending limitations. And that again is from the Vigo County Taxpayers Association. Senator Ford, yes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. You know, we're, you know, a little bit at the state level, you know, struggling a little bit because we've got the December relief money that has hit the state and some local governments and universities. And now we just have another relief package that's come through. And you take, for example, Ivy Tech has got well over $200 million to spend in relief, but yet they've not been told how to spend it. So we're really struggling on that. I personally would like to see a lot of the money that comes into local government and to the state go towards adult education. You know, not a GED program that's on a computer, but a core 40 with complete wraparound services for these adults that are in our communities without high school diplomas. I think if we're going to grow our region, grow our communities, we need to help people. And I also would like to see some more money put towards mental health that comes out of these packages. But thank you.
Fantastic. All right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Representative
Yeah,
Boyce?
I'd actually like to see us lower income taxes. And the reason I say that is because when you look at this stimulus money, if you want to, you know, I guess for lack of a better word, we'll go ahead and refer to it as that. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're basically printing off money and borrowing against our children and grandchildren's future. All right. And so if we want to see money put back into the economy, put it back in the pockets of people who were earning it. And in fact, I was reading some statistics earlier on, for example, in the in small businesses. Where did I see that figure at? I had it written down. Oh yeah, in restaurants, for example, during the pandemic, on average in Hoosier restaurants, sales are down by 37%. However, 51% of Hoosier restaurant owners say that even though their sales are down 37%, their costs have continued to rise because of utilities, taxes, and so forth. And 46% of restaurant owners here in Indiana say that it is unlikely that their restaurant will be in business 6 months from now. And so we're basically, you know, we're pouring all of this money out there, but let's put it back in the hands of people who are actually doing something with it. Here's another figure. According to the American Hotel and Lodging Association, 17,500 Hoosiers lost their hotel-related jobs due to COVID-19, and nearly 70% of Indiana's hotels could permanently close by April of this year. And so I would say put that money back in the pockets of wage earners and of business owners, because even though we're given these little snippets, that's not going to sustain them.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Borders and Representative Heaton. I saw your hand.
Yes, okay, thanks. Yeah, I think for the most part, the hospitality industry was hit the hardest. And so I think something should be done there. But as far as how we're gonna divide it up, spend it, it's hard to say, you know, but I kind of agree with Representative Borders as far as the 1.9 trillion. It's something our kids and grandkids are gonna have to pay back, but I don't know how they could do it. We're in debt as a nation, big time, and so it's disheartening. But so we'll see how it goes from here.
All right, thank you so much. And we will move on now to the public. Just now getting to the public questions. And we're asking again, if you have questions, to submit them through the Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many of these as we can. Lots of really good questions today. First one comes from Sarah Dillon, and it asks, not including running government like a business, please explain why you support and or oppose preemption legislation, that is legislation that prevents local government from passing their own.
Andrell, if you don't mind me, can they clarify that a little? I'm not quite sure exactly.
I think that's kind of where it is. So if we don't have necessarily an understanding on that one, we'll probably have to move on, and we'll encourage the person who asked that question.
Maybe somebody else has a better understanding of what they're asking than I do.
Well, I'll if you don't mind, I'd like
Go
to.
ahead, Senator Ford.
You know, I think, you know, there have been a lot of bills that I've noticed this session that do seem to take powers away from local government and move them to state government or to the legislature. You know, I think some of them come out of policy concepts. I mean, one, I think that passed out of the House, I believe it was 1395, the utility bill, that moved out of the House, where we're trying to set at the state level a policy statewide on alternative energies. And what's kind of the debate that's been happening is a lot of our counties have banned wind and have banned solar. And as we're trying to position the state to have a good energy portfolio, it's making it hard when the counties are banning those utilities. And so I think, you know, that bill is a good example of, you know, taking a little bit of power away from the county. They would still have a lot of power to decide where windmills go or solar goes. But I think, you know, there's some things when sometimes we're trying to set a statewide policy, we need to change some things at the local level. I don't think it's out of the intent that locals don't know what they're doing, but there's just bigger picture stuff, I think, that's out there.
And this is a clarification from Sarah, and she says, the reason over the years I've dealt with local officials and given recommendations and get turned down with the quote, we can't do that, state government has prevented us from doing that, it gets frustrating, is what she says, which I think kind of goes to what Senator Ford was just speaking to. Representative Borders, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. I'm going to give an example here that, all right, it's just like on the smoking ban in restaurants and now in, you know, bars and so forth as well. I had a local restaurant where the owner she allowed smoking in her restaurant because a lot of her customers smoked. And yet she privately told me, she said, I hope you guys pass that statewide smoking ban, then I can blame you, but I would prefer that in my restaurant. Well, that's exactly what happened. We passed a statewide smoking ban, and she said that her business is actually better than ever, other than, you know, because of the COVID-19 stuff. But that aside, at that point in time, she said it really improved her business, and she said even her smoking customers seemed to prefer it. So sometimes we become you know, we become the scapegoat for issues that even locals prefer. And it's like, you know, John had mentioned about the windmill legislation, actually was wind and solar. But anyhow, having said that, you know, if you look at what just happened in Texas, that comes from not having a comprehensive statewide energy plan. And so that's what we were trying to do here in Indiana, is I think about 80% of our renewable energy comes from outside of Indiana. And so we don't, and as a former mayor, so I'll be real fast here. Former mayor, I understand the frustrations, but I also realize that as a state representative now, there are times when the state does have to step up to bat and deal with an issue that can't just be dealt with on a local basis.
All right, I have to hop in here a little bit. We've got so many questions to get through. And so remember the smile pattern. If the smile doesn't work, I'll have to talk. I like talking, but I'll have to speak a little bit. So please remember the time if you could. Representative Heaton, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, we deal with, I think it was House Bill 1381 that dealt with wind and solar, and also, but there was House Bill 1520 that we passed, I want to say unanimously last month. And because of that, hopefully we will not have an issue what Texas dealt with a few weeks ago. But, one thing about the food and beverage tax, innkeeper's tax, the state of Indiana is kind of like the gatekeeper of that. We have to approve it before we allow the county council here to vote on that. And, but we do, the state does pick winners and losers on that. Might add that back in about 12 years ago, Monroe County in 2009, before I was in the General Assembly, the General Assembly voted to allow Monroe County to pass I believe it's a food and beverage tax of 1%. And the locals down there didn't approve that until about 10 years later. Just because it's not automatic, because the state passes something that the locals will pass it immediately, although here we did, but that's not always the case. But we do go through the process, and that's how it's done in most cases.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, and this one comes from Rob Hayworth, believe the superintendent of Vigo County Schools. And he asks, first, I'm a believer in the teachers and staff and administrators that are public education. I would ask you not to support legislation that takes dollars away from them and their mission to serve public school students that reside in your districts. Secondly, I ask that you know about House Bill 1266, or I ask what you know about House Bill 1266 and if you plan to support it. Third, what do you know about Stride Inc. and how much, if any, school funding flows to them? Thank you for your services. So who would like to take that on? Representative Pat.
Well, the first one, yes, I support. So the second one, I'm going to talk about Bill 1266. So from my understanding, this is what's going to, it did pass the House already, so it's in John's lap now. The Department of Education would request info from school corporations to see if their transportation system could be better. So in Vigo County, I think we're blessed to have just one school corporation. But if you look at some place like Indianapolis that has 11 school corporations, the idea of this bill is it's kind of to explore the options of perhaps 11 school corporations that all have 11 different busing transportation systems. If they could consolidate so that they're not running over different laps, if that makes sense, and sort of have some hubs where the buses would come from instead of, again, let's just talk about Indianapolis, 11 different ones. So the Department of Education, they're trying to look for some efficiency and some ways. Everyone keeps saying to try to get more money to teachers, but start to kind of do a little more deep dive. This doesn't mandate anything. It's just collecting information at this stage. So sort of kind of try to do a deep dive. Hey, let's look at the transportation industry and how it works in school corporations and see if we can make it more efficient. So that's kind of what 1266 is. And the Stride thing, I am not aware. So I can't answer to that one.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Pat. All right, there are no other, Representative Heaton.
Yeah, I was just checking. Yeah, that passed last month. It was Representative Claire's bill, and it was it passed. I think 87 to 1. But anyway, yeah, I don't know where it is in the Senate, where it stands over there, but we passed it the other day. So.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Heaton. Let's move on. the next question, and it comes from Charlie Bickle. And he asks, this week, a Navy veteran named Danny lost his battle with cancer because his cancer surgery was deemed non-essential during the month of December because of Governor Eric Holcomb's executive order. Many across this state have suffered disproportionately and lost their lives, livelihoods, and more because of government mandates. What do each of you plan to do in order to make sure that no Hoosier should be told their lives, jobs, or medical treatments are non-essential? Representative Borders.
Well, first of all, I really am sorry to hear that. It's a horrible situation, but we have had, I would have to agree with one of our members who is a former State Board of Accounts auditor. He's a member of the General Assembly now, and he says we've never audited these figures, and we haven't. And I've talked with a number of doctors. I have two son-in-laws who are both doctors, quite frankly, and a daughter who's a nurse, a daughter who's a biochemist. And if you look at, for example, the CDC's own figures, I believe it's 6% of the deaths that have occurred from COVID are COVID only. Everything else has a comorbidity. And I think it's like 40% of the deaths are nursing home residents. And my point is, I still believe that we completely shut down way too many things. And basically, we never did do an audit, a true audit as to was this actually COVID? I mean, I had a very dear friend who passed away. He was a heavy smoker, a very dear friend, but he had smoked ever since I remember. I think he probably started smoking when he was like 10 years old, but he died of lung cancer. And yet I was talking to his sister-in-law and I said, well, I was sorry about so-and-so. And she said, passing away. And she said, well, at least he made history. He was the first patient.
Representative Borders, I think we might have lost
in a certain hospital that died of. Are you still okay? You're
yeah,
actually
froze there for a second.
It says your internet connection is unstable. I'm not sure what that means, but anyhow, well, I know what it means, but I don't know if you're doing that to me or. No, I'm teasing you. But anyhow, but his death was labeled as COVID, and it wasn't. He died of. He may have had it, but the primary cause of death was terminal lung cancer, and so again. I think we just need to be completely truthful about this, and let's audit the thing and quit labeling everything under the sun as a COVID death just because COVID may have been present. Did they die from COVID or did they die with COVID? And there is a difference.
All right, thank you, Representative Borders. And Representative Path, your hand was up first, and then Representative Heath.
So as I have 4 kids and a husband, and so of course we end up at the doctor's office a lot. And I think the whole healthcare system it's so hard to navigate as a person myself who, pays the bills and tries to figure out what is being charged and how much is being charged. So in answer to this question, I'm very supportive of any kind of legislation that looks into health insurance and monitoring expenses and trying to lower prescription drug costs. So for me, I'm very supportive of trying to figure out how to make our healthcare system better, because in the end, it's going to help everyone in Indiana.
All right, Representative Heath.
Well, somewhat related to this question, deals with the executive orders of the governor, and we're trying to address that in House Bill 1123. And also the Senate, I think, had a bill, Senate Bill 407, I believe, that deals with that. And so, I know it's been very frustrating for some of the people that I'm with at times, who's essential and who's non-essential, why, and it's very frustrating over the last several months in dealing with that. But we've got some things that we're going to deal with pertaining to 1123 and the executive orders by the governor, and we'll see if he vetoes that, but we'll see if we might override his veto if that ever happens. But anyway, it's something that is going to be addressed in this upcoming session.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. This one comes from Patty Curley, and she says, I have a comment and a question. Comment, I'm totally opposed to funneling public school dollars to charter schools. The majority of the public agrees. Public funds are there to support public education. I don't understand why this is such a difficult concept. That is her comment. Her question, you are all colleagues of Alan Morrison. Have any of you ever addressed with him why he does not participate in these Cracker Barrel sessions? Thank you. Bueller? All right.
I think Alan just needs to speak for himself on that one. I mean, it's his call. So.
Sure. Representative Heaton.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to Alan, but I talked to him last month because there was a chance that he could participate in this, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him last week if he was. But yeah, I don't know. They need to address that with Alan, and he can speak for himself.
And I believe we have his contact information in our chat, so you can send him the email directly if you'd like. All right, moving on to our next question from Jennifer Todd. Please discuss your thoughts on law enforcement related bills related to de-escalation, police response, and officer education, such as House Bill 1468. What are your thoughts related to changes needed in these areas? And who would like to start this one? Representative Pat.
I'm hoping 1468, and Bob and Bruce, you might have to help me here. Was that the one that was passed with Sterwald and Shackelford? Is that the one? Wait, Bob, you have to unmute real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, that was 1006, but
Okay.
yeah, 1468. That's Steve Davidson bill, and I'm not sure about that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna talk on 1006 real quick, Bob, while you're looking. So 1006, I think, is a great bill. It addresses three main points, and it was done bipartisan support. Robin Shackelford is she's a Democrat who's in charge of the ILBC anyway, and they worked all summer together. And I personally supported 1006. I'm not sure about the other one, but I thought it was a really good bill put together.
All right, and let's go ahead and go with Representative Heaton, since he was talking first, and then we'll go to Senator Ford right after him.
Yeah, that bill 1468, it passed out of the House back on February 22nd, to be exact, 95-0, and it went over to the Senate, and it just deals with it. It says the synopsis deals with various health matters. Yeah. And it deals with mental health as well as addiction and so forth. But yeah, that passed overwhelmingly in the House, and now it's going over to the Senate. So we'll see what happens there.
All right, and Senator Ford.
Yeah, I don't know much about House Bill 1468, but sounds like it was a good bipartisan bill. But I will say that in appropriations, Senate appropriations this week, we heard House Bill 1006, and I would echo Tanya's remarks in that it was a great bill done on a bipartisan effort. And there's training in there for officers to, help them understand all types of different cultures and different situations. And I think it will help, our law enforcement officers across the state to be better trained for all kinds of situations.
All right, Senator Ford. And Representative Borders, did I see you say something a little earlier? Start speaking.
No, but I mean, I will say this as a former mayor, and as mayor, I was over the police department. One of the concerns that I have is that we are holding our police officers at a level where they're not supposed to have any emotions and so forth. And I mean, yeah, and we constantly are, throwing out this mantra of training, and I get that, and I understand that, and there are times it's necessary. But I think we have to be careful about, I've been in situations with, for example, our chief of police when I was mayor and our assistant chief of police, where, people are like literally right in their face, almost to them, where they're yelling at them and slobbering at them and so forth. I mean, and not necessarily spitting in their face, because then they can be arrested for doing that. But, I am tired of us holding police officers to a standard where they can't have any emotions and get angry. And again, they know they're professionally trained. They have to be cautious about how much they do react, but we have to be careful about every time a police officer reacts to something that automatically the officer is somehow guilty, because there's oftentimes, as we find out down the road, there are other circumstances that were involved. And so I do think House Bill 1006 was good, but I also think that we need to be careful in just assuming that the police are always the guilty party, when sometimes a lot of the story's been left out.
Thank you very much, Representative Borders. Representative Heaton, I see your hand, although you've addressed this question, if you could have a quick response. Yeah.
Well, actually, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I got to run. I got to be somewhere at 11:30, and
Okay.
I know it's getting down to the last 10 minutes or so, but I got to take off. But I appreciate everybody attending and all their interaction that we have. So thank you.
Representative Heaton, as always, thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to get in contact with Representative Heaton, we have his information there for you in the chat. But have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, Representative. All right, you take care. All right, let's move on. We've got just a few minutes left, and we've, in theory, have 10 plus questions. We're not going to get through all of them, but let's try to run through as many as we can to expedite these. Carla Hansen-Spear asks, Indiana has already lost more than 80% of wetlands. Of the remaining wetlands, only about 10 to 20% are protected federally. The Indiana Department of Environmental Management and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, as well as many other organizations, oppose Senate Bill 389, which would remove protection for isolated wetlands. Isolated wetlands are defined on surface water, but are often connected to groundwater. Will you protect Indiana's valuable natural resources and oppose Senate Bill 389? And I know, Senator Ford, you've spoken to this in the past. I don't know if you want to necessarily take on this right now.
Well, I will say that, the bill is in the House, hasn't received a hearing yet, but my understanding is there's lots of discussion, lots of negotiation going on, so the bill can be heard. And I've heard a lot of concern over this legislation, and I spoke about it last meeting quite a bit, but I think it's still a work in progress. Like much of our legislation, we keep it moving so we can continue to work on it.
Thank you very much, Senator. And Representative Path, yes.
So it's interesting about this bill. So I didn't really, I keep telling people I'm still learning. I walked in the other day to committee, and there was a bill on FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, and the amendment completely rewrote the entire bill. And I was like, where's the old bill? So to sort of know what Senator Ford is saying, I truly believe in protecting our wetlands. So if the bill were to come to me right now and I had to vote on it, I would vote no. I've heard a lot of discussion about how they are amending it and trying to change it. And, there's always a possibility that the chairman of the committee doesn't hear it as well. So just so that people know, even though it passes the Senate, doesn't mean we hear it in the House, and vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see what we, if it comes to fruition, what I'll be asked to vote on. So I just thought I'd throw that in for people.
Thank you very much. And let's move along to the next question. And this one specifically mentions Senator Ford here. It asks for your position on House Bill 1369 that has been referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which would allow any law-abiding adult who was legally eligible to carry a legally possessed handgun without first having to obtain government permission.
Yeah, that I think that's the constitutional carry bill that overwhelmingly passed the House. I haven't heard any of the testimony, and I've skimmed the bill. But in general, I support the concept of constitutional carry, but I haven't read the particulars of this bill at this point. I do think it's a constitutional right to carry a gun, and I think it doesn't take. When you buy a gun, you would still have to go through you still have to go through the federal licensing process, which would do background checks. So that's I guess my point. What I have to say at this point on that issue.
All righty, Senator Ford. Moving on to the next one. And this one specifically mentions Representative Path. And it asks, could you please explain more about what you meant when you mentioned that voucher schools do not have to follow the same rules as public schools?
So it's my understanding. So a lot of voucher schools, again, my understanding, I could be wrong. I'm always wrong. And charter schools. So they don't have the same accreditation processes that that a public school does. So for example, you could graduate from, what do they call it? A non-accredited, non-public school, which we don't have in Terre Haute. And you could graduate from that, and that entity accepts state money to help fund that program. So that's simply what I meant. There's just different requirements. There's different requirements when it comes to school boards. Some charter schools have school boards, some don't. So that's what I meant.
All right, thank you very much. And we are moving on to our last question for today. It's gone by very quickly. And this comes from Rod Bradfield, and he asks, with the increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans nationwide during the pandemic, is anything being done or addressed at the state level?
No.
Representative Borders.
Actually, I mean, we did pass a hate crimes bill, probably not as strong as some people would have liked, but I've, you know, and I mean, just because he says with the increase in hate crimes, you know, against Asian Americans, I don't know if that's accurate or not. Maybe it is, maybe it's not.
I think probably at least the increased coverage. We've definitely seen it more in the headline. So maybe he's referencing
possibly so,
the media
but I
coverage,
will tell you this though, that if you look at those crimes, the last year that we had a complete tally on hate crimes, 0.003%, I believe, was the figure of crimes in Indiana that were committed as hate crimes. Most of the time, most of the crimes are, you know, either just, you know, violent felons because of robbery, rape, whatever, or you have crimes of passion, you know, between an ex-spouse or whatever. And so, again, I wanted, my biggest concern is that in just painting everything with a big broad brush on that, when so many of the crimes, the vast majority are not hate crimes, I want to make sure that we're not using hate crimes legislation as basically, or the lack thereof of a bill being written the way that they want, as an excuse to go after law-abiding citizens who simply may disagree with someone politically over an issue or whatever, because I see that happening in some states as well, where things are labeled a hate crime just simply because somebody has a difference of opinion, but no crime has been committed.
Thank you very much, Representative Borders. Anyone else? All right, well, that concludes our question and answer portion of today's virtual Cracker Barrel session. And again, if you were not able to have your question read, please submit them individually to each legislator. At this time, we're going to have closing comments and 1 minute for each legislator to kind of say their final thoughts and anything else they'd like to add. And we will start, let's do ladies first today. Let's start with Representative Pat.
Thank you, Rondrell, and thanks as always for hosting. So my education continues as we try to navigate this whole past year of COVID and its implications on pretty much everything in society, and especially, I mean, just all over, and people are still, we're still through it. We're still trying to get through it. So our laws, a lot of the bills that we're seeing, some of them deal with COVID and its effect and some don't. So as I sit here and listen to these questions, I mean, some things we see and some we don't, but we're trying to do the best for the state of Indiana overall. So I just, again, you know, thank you for your support. And I know my information is in the chat somewhere, so you're always welcome to reach out to my office. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Pat. Let's go to Representative Borders now.
As always, let's open this economy up. Let's get things moving again. As I shared earlier, 70% of our hotels may close by the month of April. 46% of our restaurant operators are saying they may not be in business 6 months from now. Let's open our economy back up. Let's get things rolling.
Thank you Very much, Representative Borders. And the last word will come from our senator today, Senator John Ford.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank the library and all the sponsors for hosting this. It's always good to get in front of folks and talk about what issues we're seeing. You know, we're kind of, when we're in session, we're kind of in this weird bubble where we feel like we're not necessarily connected to the world. But, you know, I look forward to the second part of session. A few things I'll be working on. I got from Representative Pryor a bill that's working on setting up a state plan on dementia, to study that and really see what we need to do to support senior citizens or people facing that. Another bill that we're working on that we sent to the House would set up a carbon credit program for manufacturers and businesses out there. So I think there's a lot of great legislation that we didn't get to touch today, but as always, you know, people can use the information here and feel free to reach out to me through email or text. And again, appreciate the time today.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Ford. And again, thank you to all of our legislators for taking some time and talking to us on this Saturday morning. We are so glad that we're able to still have some semblance of a community discussion even during this pandemic, hopefully the tail end of this pandemic. Just want to let you know, go to the order. The next and last, hard to believe, we're already down to the last Cracker Barrel session of this session will be on April the 10th, and that will be at 10 a.m. And again, that will be a virtual. Hopefully, here's hoping that next year we'll be back to normal, where we can all see each other face to face. But thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time. Thank you so much to all of the participants. Thank you to the Vigo County Public Library for hosting, and to all of our sponsors. But I'm Ron Drell Moore one more time. Thank you. Have a good day.